Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is Empowering Astrology for May 9th through 15th, 2022. I had to think about it. I also have to move my mic. So, sorry we are having a little bit of a late start. Some days I have it more together than others. But if you are watching live, as always, do say hello. It's always fun to see where everybody's watching from, even if you're not watching live. If you're watching the replay, which you can watch on Instagram, on Spotify, of course, on Facebook, and also listen. I did say Spotify. Also watch on YouTube. So, yeah, we got a lot going on right now, and part of this week is the preparation for the Scorpio Lunar Eclipse for May 16th, 2022. So we are just a little under a week off from a lunar eclipse. So if you recall, we're in eclipse season, which happens every 6 months, so no big deal. But eclipse season typically makes things a little bit interesting. Life can turn, can pivot in a new direction. Things can come in and out of our lives. And certainly if you are what's called a fixed sign, my Tauruses, my Leos, my Scorpios, and my Aquariuses, it's quite possible that life is a little bit loud at the moment. But we'll go back and recap the eclipse in just a moment. But again, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer, and I'm also a psychic medium here in the New York City area. And every week we gather live to listen about the astrology, understand what is happening, how do we work with it, because the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%, but it feels like during eclipse season, feels like we have less power and control. And I think eclipses remind us that there's just things that are outside of our control. I think you can work with an eclipse, certainly. And if you are a fixed sign, you can use this energy very proactively. For example, if you're a Taurus, it's about new beginnings. So how do you actively take new beginnings? If you are even a Scorpio, this new beginnings, for examples in relationships. Well, how do you proactively go out and connect with people, to do things differently, to open up? And these are the things that we've been talking about week in and week out. Of course, this is different for all signs. This is why if you go back and you listen to some of the previous weeks, over the past few weeks, I've been saying, where has this energy been manifesting for you? But at the heart of this time is this very interesting polarity that's between Taurus, the second earth sign, the first earth sign, second sign of the zodiac, and then also on the other side of things, Scorpio. It's the eighth sign, but these are two signs that you have. On one end, you have Taurus, which is about the fertility and the rebirth of life, and then you have Scorpio on the other end, which is about the decay and the end of life. And these are just two natural parts of life. And so these are things that we learn to navigate both in our daily human lives, but even in small ways. It doesn't have to be dramatic events. It's how do we make space for endings? And I know that that's maybe a little bit of a tense word, endings, but I'm saying this as a Scorpio myself. My role, or if you are a Scorpio, for example, my role is to help incarnate the energies of Scorpio. That's part of my sun being in that sign. And to say that, okay, well, life comes to an end at some point, but then the energy of Taurus, or those who are watching who are Tauruses, your job is to incarnate the energy of Taurus, which is that life comes back. It's about the sweetness of life, the rebirth of life, and the fertility of life. So these sort of life and death, these two major polarities and axes in life, that's what we're navigating right now. So even though we had a solar eclipse on April 30th, that was just a couple of weeks ago, it's this new beginning that's going to be with us even for the next 6 months. And this new beginning is about, how do we create solid ground under our feet? How do we create stability and security? But as you've been hearing me talk about with the energies of Uranus and Taurus, these are new beginnings that are let's just say, not playing it safe. Uranus is an energy that creates this crisis. It's like, is this for me? Is this not for me? How do I break out of the mold? How do I turn everything upside down and get that new beginning I need, and maybe radically need, or create a radical change in your life? So everybody is going to live this time differently, but what I can say is that typically eclipses, they feel intense. Life feels like suddenly everything demands your attention. As a good friend of mine said, she just feels like everything is sort of crumbling or on fire. I realize that's her experience, not necessarily yours, but it's sort of, we come up to these moments every 6 months with the eclipse, and this is when we prepare for the next chapter of our life. Now, these eclipses that we've been having, they are these, we had one lunar eclipse back in November of 2021, but this is the first set of eclipses that we've had in this series of eclipses that are going to take us into the end of 2023. So in many ways, this is the start of a story. It's the continuation of a story. It's not the end of a story. We'll see, we'll come back to this point, we'll revisit it over and over again as we even go into next year. And this is what I love about eclipses, is that they are this living moment in time, this sort of electric thread of energy that even though it could be 3 months later, it could be later this week. We have the Sun conjunct the North Node on Friday, May 13th, and then other points where we keep referring back to this new beginning. So recapping the eclipses, and something I just want to kind of quickly mention, because this past weekend we had, it was called Moon in Leo. Now, why is that important? Well, Leo is a fixed sign, and this was what's called the first quarter moon after the solar eclipse. So that first quarter moon is really revealing, because it really shows us, perhaps, not always, but shows us perhaps some of the bigger stories that we are dealing with this eclipse season. So this is, and I kind of wrote about this on Instagram. I watched the Kentucky Derby this weekend, and I'm not typically a sports person, but long story short, it was a party. I went to it. And if you watched it, somebody won the Derby at 80-1 odds. Now that, I was thinking more about the astrology, and I was thinking about, wow, this is a really interesting manifestation of these eclipse energies, because here's somebody who upsets the order, who comes from behind, comes out of nowhere. I don't know if you watch the replay, but I think that energy, of course, I'm referring to a specific event that which may or may not be relevant to your life, but it's an event that is an expression of the energy that we are navigating right now. So maybe in your own life, beat the odds, come from behind, do something that nobody thought you would do, win. So this is not necessarily a negative thing. And maybe with Uranus and Taurus, it's trying to break you out of something that typically you're stuck in, or maybe it's stuck in yourself or stuck in the past. So these are really powerful energies to just kind of bear witness to and to be present with. So that's why I was telling people to really pay attention to some of the themes and the stories that you're navigating, or were navigating just this past weekend. This would have been May 7th and 8th of 2022. So yeah, we're still in eclipse season. This week we are preparing for the next and the final eclipse in Scorpio. This will be later this week. Actually, it'll be technically on Monday, May 16th. So we'll talk more about it next week, but I wanted to kind of get it more on our radar because it will be very early in the morning, at least here Eastern time. It will be really early in the morning, so practically on Sunday, if you really think about it. So what can we expect this week? Well, this is the analogy that I use for eclipse season. You know, we come to these moments every 6 months where it's as if the stage of our life prepares for the next act. The Scorpio on the brain. The curtain comes down, and it comes down. There's that sense of anticipation for the next act, and there's sort of that sense that when the curtain comes up, there might be a completely different cast of characters, a different scene, the continuation of something, but nevertheless, the story, the act changes. So we are going into one of those times where we have the Scorpio, geez, I'm still Scorpio on the brain. We have this Taurus solar eclipse, And then the lunar eclipse really sets us forward into this new season of time. So we got eclipse season this week. We also have Mercury retrograde. Mercury turns, I must be feeling Mercury retrograde. And even though I'm a pretty blasé astrologer when it comes to Mercury retrograde, I'm not saying it's not a thing. I just think that this cultural idea of Mercury retrograde is very modern, meaning it's not a traditional concept, and I'm happy to be corrected. But as I know it, this idea where we all freak out about Mercury retrograde is fairly modern. And certainly the more and more that astrology comes into our collective consciousness, the more that we get really panicked about Mercury retrograde. It is a thing, and it's really, I think, for us to understand first, what are retrogrades? Well, retrogrades happen more frequently than you realize. Mercury just turns retrograde the most times. That's why we noticed. Mercury will turn retrograde 3 to 4 times a year for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. Now, if you were to block off that time in the calendar, you wouldn't have a lot of days left. So I think, number one, we need to understand that it's something that happens quite frequently. Number two, what is a retrograde? Well, apart from its astronomical definition, where the planet appears to go back in the sky, well, it's not really going backwards in the sky. It's an optical illusion. But for our purposes as in astrology, it's as if the planet is going backwards. It's as if we were rewinding something. Everything in this universe is ones and zeros. It's yin and yang. And so when the Mercury goes retrograde, it's a time to pull inward. It's receptive. It's more yin. And that's just sort of the natural ebb and flow. Mercury will turn direct, for example, on, I think it's June 4th. Hopefully I'm not mistaken. So that's something that happens very common. I'm going to get the date. Mercury turns direct June 3rd. See? So we've got like pretty much 4 weeks of Mercury retrograde. And it's a time we have to go in, we have to reflect. We can't just quickly make decisions. It's a more we think about Mercury in its 2 signs, as the ruler of Gemini and as the ruler of Virgo. Mercury in Virgo is about systems and analysis. It's editorializing. It's organization. It takes the information of Mercury and Gemini and it starts to put it in place, starts to organize it, starts to categorize it. And it sort of shows us these 2 sides to Mercury, both the gathering in of information and ideas, and on the other side, the sorting through and the discernment and the we always think of Virgo as having this connection to Aquarius, because Aquarius is Virgo's 6th sign. So we think about systems and networks and even technology. I think of Mercury and Virgo, but nevertheless, this is a time where we can't move forward on something. We have to sort of turn around and sort of weigh our options and sort of use our discernment. And I say that because I always get the people that ask me, well, I have to move. I have to sign a lease. I need to do this. It's Mercury retrograde. I'm only speaking for myself, but I have moved. I have ended major relationships. I've traveled all during Mercury retrograde. Lived to tell the tale, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe, as we get into Mercury retrograde tomorrow, things get a little screwy. So classic Mercury retrograde is that communication is a little wonky. So over the next few days, just double and triple check your communication. Be annoying about it. Clarify. Do not assume. That's the thing with communication. When we assume, it kind of creates some problems. Give yourself time. If you have to sign a contract, don't come after me if you do and everything goes wrong. I think it's fine. Just do your due diligence, live your life. Again, you can't put your life on pause for 3 to 4 weeks at a time 3 to 4 times out of the year. There wouldn't be that much. Further, all the planets turn retrograde except for the sun and the moon. A lot of us don't realize that. So a planet like Mercury turns retrograde 3 to 4 weeks. Well, you go to Mars and it's 2 months. Of course, that only happens every 2 years. Venus will turn retrograde for 40 days every, I believe it's 18 months. Jupiter turns retrograde for every 4 months. So Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto turn retrograde 5 months out of the year. So that's, there you go. That's a retrograde. So, but do your due diligence, double check your communication, live your life, but back things up. Don't leave things to chance. And if you really feel like you don't feel like it's a good time to sign, then don't. Or to start something, then don't. This is the thing. Trust yourself. Your body has a lot of intelligence. Unfortunately, sometimes we're not always in touch with our body's intelligence. We're always in the mind. And maybe to Mercury's time in Gemini, we can't necessarily always rely on the mind. Mercury in Gemini is very much about the mind and communications and ideas and information. We just have to do things differently. That said, Mercury turns retrograde at 4 degrees of Gemini. It will go all the way back to 26 degrees of Taurus. This is sort of this path that we were rewinding. 26 Taurus is very close to some eclipse degrees, so it probably means that early June is going to be a little bit interesting, especially since Mercury turns direct the day before Saturn turns retrograde. So put the 3rd and the 4th in your calendar. It's probably going to be a time of some serious decisions. Then there's Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter, as you may recall, has been in Pisces since the end of December of 2021. So Jupiter typically spends about a year in each sign. It does move very quickly through this part of the zodiac. It pretty much flies through Pisces and Aries. And Jupiter will be in and out. It will go back into Pisces on October 28th. But between now and October 28th of 2022, Jupiter, well, not now, tomorrow, May 10th, Jupiter will be in Aries. So what's Jupiter? We're talking about Mercury, the planet of voice and communication. Jupiter works a little bit differently. And sometimes in astrology, we think of Jupiter as this planet of good fortune, kind of this Santa Claus reputation. And then we get really disappointed when Jupiter comes to our sign and it doesn't give us all the presents that we were promised. Sorry, Aries. Sorry, Pisces. But I think that Jupiter does talk about growth and expansion. Why? Because Jupiter is the planet that inspires us to look beyond ourselves. If we were just living in a world where everything ended at Mars, meaning we had no idea, and this is symbolically, metaphorically, we had no idea of the zodiac or the planets beyond Mars, and we would be living at the level of Mars, which is instinct. It's like, I need this, I want this, it's about and even, of course, Venus in the mix does help us understand relationships. But Mercury, Venus, Mars, they are what are called personal planets. They talk about our personal lives, our personalities, how we interact and exchange and socialize with one another. But Jupiter and Saturn, they are more on a societal level. They talk about cause and effect, laws. They talk about karma on some level. Karma just meaning that there is this sort of natural order, balance, cause and effect. So Jupiter, it's not a personal planet. It's talking about the things that are outside of ourselves. And so without the energy of Jupiter, we do not question. We are sort of completely unawares and maybe even ignorant of the world beyond this world. We don't want to travel. We have zero interest in learning about what's beyond the next 10 miles or the next whatever. With the Jupiter, it puts us into the energies of the quest to understand ourselves, the quest to understand life, the quest to travel and to explore, to educate ourselves. And without that energy, things don't grow. And so Jupiter's been in Pisces since December, I believe it's the 28th. And while it was in Pisces, where was this sort of sense of quest and search? It was happening within. So Pisces is Jupiter's natural home, one of Jupiter's natural homes. These are what are called ruling planets. It's a little bit technical side of astrology, but a very important side of astrology. And when Jupiter is in Sagittarius, for example, which is the other ruler, the other sign that Jupiter rules, it's about the external quest for wisdom and knowledge and education and experience and truth and knowledge, if I didn't say truth already. But in Pisces, it's been internal, it's been existential, it's been spiritual, it's been almost mystical and even magical, as sort of heavy as that word is. But Jupiter coming into Aries, it's sort of this new beginning, this sort of new cycle, this new quest. We are sort of over the next 12 years, yes, 12 years, going through each of the 12 zodiac signs in search of something. In theory, we get to Pisces and we've found it. Hopefully. But Aries represents the start of the zodiac, its new beginnings. It's also a sign that's ruled by Mars. And if Jupiter is faith and truth, this is a time where we have to sort of stand up for what we believe in. We have to sort of talk about our truths or be a leader or be an inspiration. I mean, of course, there is that shadow side of truth, that shadow side of faith and wisdom and knowledge. We still have to be open to different perspectives, but there is this sense that, you know, we're going to have the energies of Mars. There's more of this need to share what we know, share our wisdom and knowledge, and sort of really stand up, because there's that sense of mission and purpose with Jupiter, but also with the energies of Mars. And I think in its positive expression, Jupiter in Aries it really lights a path. It really shows a way forward. And it comes from that sense of optimism and faith that maybe things are all going to work out. I don't know how. But that said, Jupiter will spend the next, until October 28th. It'll be in Aries. It'll go back to Pisces, and then by the end of December, it's back into Aries. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go through each of the 12 signs. And then we get to later this week, and the Taurus sun meets up with the north node of the moon. And while the north node of the moon is not a planet, today is an important point in the sky because it makes eclipse happen. And even though we already had the Taurus new moon solar eclipse, this meeting of the north node and the sun does talk about these eclipse energies coming forward. So it is sort of the doors of fate. And I realize fate's a big word, but when we're dealing with eclipses, things feel fated, things feel important. These are the things that mark our life. And when we go back and, God forbid, when we die and it all flashes before us, these are the things that we remember. We don't remember the mundane moments, we remember the important moments. So the sun getting up to the north node is sort of this check-in on the eclipses and sort of sending us off into a new direction and ushering in this new time, because the last time the sun was in Taurus in 2021, the nodes were still in Gemini and Sagittarius. This is the first time the sun's meeting up with the north node in Taurus. I think probably next year is the last time, because I forget when the nodes will switch. I think it's later in 2023. The nodes will switch into Aries and Libra. Don't quote me on that. I have to kind of look that up. But we get into this weekend, and then we have a couple of other things happen. We have the sun make a square to Saturn. So this is all in advance of the Scorpio lunar eclipse. And like I said, even though that eclipse is technically on Monday, it is a bit early, so I wanted to give you all a preview. We'll talk more about it next week. But the sun squares Saturn, Saturn puts things into focus. And I'm saying that because a lot of my job, of course, I can't tell you what to do. A lot of my clients, they don't have the clarity. They're sort of looking for that thing that's going to tell them yes or no. And so I wish astrology were that clear, because it is a symbolic and metaphoric language. I have to do my best to interpret this metaphoric language for you. But Saturn's one of those planets where you get that focus, hopefully. So Sun square Saturn is like, what are we doing? Is this working? Is this not working? Are you honoring your time and your commitments, boundaries, borders? What are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? And so there's this thing that things have to be put back into order and balance whenever we meet up with Saturn. The receipts you have to have the receipts. Things have to add up. Saturn, annoyingly so, but I'm going to defend Saturn, is the great accountant in the sky, so to speak. So we're meeting up with Saturn in advance of a lunar eclipse, and Saturn is kind of, giving us a reality check this weekend. Or Saturn is saying, what's the next big milestone? Is it a relationship? Is it career? Is it home and family? Is it you? Are you the next big milestone? Are you ready for the next big chapter in your life, for example? Venus also meets up with Chiron. Sometimes we forget about Chiron. I don't forget about Chiron. Chiron's in Aries. It's been in Aries since 2018. And Chiron, it's a newer addition to astrology if you're scratching your head and like, what is Chiron? Chiron. Chiron for me is an important point because it talks about pain and suffering. It talks about our healing journey. And so Venus coming up to Chiron, right, in advance of the lunar eclipse, says that the Scorpio full moon is trying to get us to heal something. Maybe it's something very old. There's a sense of the Scorpio full moon wants us to release something, to let something, air quotes, die, so that something can come in its place. We need that Scorpio season to create the decay, which is that creates the fertility that allows for us to have all the beautiful flowers and blossoms and trees in bloom that we're having right now, for example. So something has to end, and maybe it hits on a deeper pain point. My feeling about Chiron and Aries is that it really talks about the bravery and courage needed sometimes to take action and to move forward. And a lot of times we stumble. We're like, oh, I know I need to do this, but then we lose the nerve. We don't do what we need to do. And sometimes we need to do the hard things, and that's life. And I think maybe that's a reminder of these energies in Scorpio, whether or not this is what you directly experience, is that sometimes we have to do the hard things. We have to end something. We have to make a change. We have to let something go that is just not supporting us and giving us life. It's actually quite toxic. Sometimes we have to stand up for ourselves because nobody else is. Venus conjunct Chiron and Aries. So that's sort of this energy that's in the background. And then, of course, we have the lunar eclipse on the 16th. This will be at 25 degrees of Scorpio on my sun, no less. Good times. If your birthday is around the time of the eclipse, or if you were born around the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th of November, you're sort of going into a time in your life where you're in the spotlight. Life is sort of asking a lot of you. That's the thing about lunar eclipses. There's a demand to take action, a demand to pay attention, a demand to make a left or a right or an up or a down. But you kind of can't keep staying where you're going. But that's a lot to cover. I realize that we're already kind of 28 minutes into all this, but let's sort of go quickly, the best I can go quickly, through the 12 signs for your astrology of May 9th through 15th, 2022. So we'll start with Aries. Aries, so this lunar eclipse that we're having is going to happen in something called your 8th sign. So it really underscores a lot of the things that I was saying a few moments ago about the eclipse in Scorpio, or Scorpio energy in general, is that we always come to points in our life, and certainly points in our zodiac journey. Zodiac is really just a clock. It's a lot of things. But this is a time when the spotlight is on the things that you have to face, the deeper emotions, the intimacies, the vulnerabilities, the power, the control, but also the things that need to end. And so really pay attention to what's coming up right now, Aries, because you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But Aries, you do have Jupiter arriving in your sign, so maybe you need that boost. Whatever you're navigating, of course, everybody's going to experience this differently. Whatever you're navigating over the next days, weeks, months, to have Jupiter in your sign maybe gives you a sense that all things are going to work out, that you have a sense of protection, or that you have more courage and confidence than you typically do. And like I said, maybe you need that. Your planet right now, Mars, is still in Pisces. It's hanging out with Neptune. It's one of the last two planets left in Pisces, after we had so many planets in Pisces in April and even March at one point. But this is a time about really going within and looking at your life through more of a deeper existential lens. So rest, Aries, don't push too hard. Eclipses can be psychically taxing. You have your ruler and the ruler of the eclipse in your 12th. So it's time of retreat, rest, recuperation, letting go of the attachments. This includes sort of the ego attachments that you don't need anymore, and this even includes addictions. What are you addicted to in your life? And maybe that's kind of a weird thing to say, but we are talking about the 12th, and you just the 12th is about letting go and surrender. And Mars is conjunct Pisces. Mars is conjunct Neptune, so it is sort of this time to focus on your spiritual energy, to ask yourself deeper questions, and to connect to something beyond yourself. Taurus, how was that solar eclipse for you on the 30th of April? You are in a time of new beginnings, and that new beginnings still continues on. And this is a new beginning that you're going to keep going back to over and over again, at least over the next 6 months. Just a little looking ahead, there will be another series of eclipses in October and November. This eclipse will be on October 25th, will be in Scorpio. We got plenty to talk about then. That said, this is such a time about you. It's about other people. It's about relationships. It's about compromise, balance, interaction, and of course, new beginnings. And these are new beginnings that really capitalize on a lot of the personal changes that you've been seeing over the last 4 years actually, when Uranus went into Taurus in May of 2018, March of 2019. Jupiter arriving in your 12th sign says that over the next however many months until October 28th, it's about these sort of deeper spiritual, esoteric, existential questions. What do I believe in? What's my truth? What's my faith? How do I find it? Do I need to meditate on a mountaintop? Do I need to go to a retreat? Do I need to read a book? We all have to find those deeper answers within in our own way. But Taurus, Scorpio is your relationship sign. So a lunar eclipse in your relationship sign puts other people in your life in the spotlight. If you are in a relationship, a lunar eclipse can sort of force an issue. It can open a door. It can say it's time for the next step in the relationship. It's time to move in, get married, end the relationship. Maybe something's not working. But I think that with the back and forth between the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse, it's all about balance. I think the eclipses, when they are in our sign and also in the sign opposing us, is sort of this reminder that it can't be all us. At the same time, it can't be all about other people. There has to be that natural balance for you. But this is a pivotal time, Taurus. It's not just the eclipses, it's Uranus in Taurus, it's Saturn over in Aquarius, your career sign, and maybe that's part of the sort of bigger questions and answers and decisions that you're coming up to as the Sun squares Saturn later this week. But it is about relationships, and having eclipses in your relationship sign over the next, year at this point. I think there's one more eclipse in Scorpio next year, that's not right. But I'm not. I mean, one more eclipse in 2023. That's what I'm trying to say in Scorpio. But that said, you're still working out this story with relationships. But people are coming into your life. People are going out of your life. And if you're not in a relationship, pay attention to the people that are arriving, because they could be quite important, play an important part in your life. Gemini, well, first, your planet Mercury turns retrograde on May 10th. No big deal. This happens all the time, but it is a time that between Mercury going back into Taurus later this month, turning direct on the beginning of June. God, I'm in retrograde. Beginning of June, this is a time when you're sort of straddling two chapters of your life, and maybe going back into Taurus means you have to go back and recheck something, redo something, really truly end something and prepare for some sort of new beginning. That said, Jupiter is leaving your career sign, where it sort of gave you this sort of new beginning or inspiration or fresh start in your professional life, and now it's going into the part of your chart that talks about friends. So over the next however many months until October 28th, this is about new friendships, new community, a sense of greater connection. Of course, we've all been a little bit disconnected over the past few years. So how do you refresh and renew your social circle, your friends, both the new friendships, but also existing friendships? This lunar eclipse in Scorpio, it's in your sixth sign. And the sixth sign is all about health and wellness. And of course, every Gemini is going to live this differently, but this is a time where you can't neglect your physical body. You can't neglect your physical life. And if there is a project, or if there's just stuff that you need to attend to, get it organized, get a plan, clean things out. There's a need to purify your environment. Scorpio is very Marie Kondo. It will, kind of get rid of everything that doesn't spark joy, or it will just set it on fire. But this is a need to really kind of make your physical life really clear and focused. On the other side of things, that there are sort of physical difficulties or challenges that you have to attend to, like use this energy to really kind of get it sorted. But that said, use it proactively to really attend to your health, make positive changes in your physical life, let go of things that are not supporting your physical life, that are not giving you optimum health, maybe changes in diet, changes in fitness. But it is so much about your real day-to-day human life around this time, brushing your teeth, showing up to work, getting things organized. And so that's, really attend to those physicalities. And I say that because Gemini, we've been talking about this the past however many weeks and months. You're in such a deep existential time. It's so much about like the world and the external world, your inner world. Like, let's not forget your human world. So those are some of the bigger things that are happening this week for you, Gemini. Cancer. So Cancer, this lunar eclipse is happening in something called your fifth sign. So it's about really putting the spotlight on what makes you you, what makes you an individual, what sort of makes you separate in the best possible way from everybody else. It's about talents, gifts, creativity, self-expression, identity. And it's also an eclipse that sort of plays off this larger question of, well, who am I? Where do I belong in the world? Who are my friends? Who are my community? And how do I really maintain a strong sense of individualization, especially with this lunar eclipse in Scorpio? Jupiter is going to Aries, Cancer, and Aries, believe it or not, is actually your career sign. So over the next however many months until October 28th, you are in a time that's generally considered a time of career growth and expansion. I don't want to overpromise Jupiter, but typically wherever Jupiter is, things work out. Things work out a little bit more. So if you need work or you need a job, use this time to really be proactive, like go after things. If you are in a current position, see how Jupiter brings in new opportunities, new growth, new ambitions, new responsibilities. But Jupiter can sometimes make an existing issue bigger, just a little side note. But that said, that's where a lot of the, like I said, growth that's happening for you right now is in your professional life. With these energies of the lunar eclipses, you've got Saturn still in your 8th. And so I think there's a week of having to make some serious decisions, and maybe decisions that are just about getting real about something that's deep inside of you. Leo, you are a fixed sign, and as I've been saying week in, week out, you are not so fixed at the moment. What does that mean? You have to understand that life is sort of built on things that you don't want them to move. You want them to stay grounded and fixed, because if they're not, it creates such a sense of instability in life. But sort of the weird thing about this time right now is it's sort of reminding us that even the things that we thought would never change have to change. That is either liberating, terrifying, but it's a time when sort of the things that you've been building, maybe they have to shift. Maybe you have to rebuild them someplace else. That said, you just had a solar eclipse in your career sign, so this is such a time that's focusing on your professional life, reinventing your social life, professional life, and for some Leos, you maybe even making a 180 in your professional life. That said, the lunar eclipse, that's not quite this week, but almost, it's really putting the spotlight on home, family, but what really is heart of your life. You have to understand that the fourth sign, the fourth house in astrology, is what really supports everything. And if you're not getting your needs met, if you don't feel like you have a sense of home or safety or stability or that sense of inner security, it's hard to go out into the world. So really tend to your roots and your foundation at this time, deeper emotions, maybe coming up memories. And then we have Jupiter and Aries. So Aries is your 9th sign, and the 9th sign is so much about, well, how do we see the world? What do we believe in? What's our truth? What's our philosophy? What's our faith? And so until October 28th, it's going to be a little bit of a philosophical time. Well, really thinking about these bigger questions about what are your convictions? But that said, it is a time where travel, and especially foreign travel, long distance travel, will be highlighted, and even education. Maybe there is a desire to take more classes, and for some people to even go back to school. But nevertheless, Leo, this is a pivotal time. Like, when I say pivotal, this is the time when it's sort of like the big milestones are happening. You get a new job. There's a relationship change. There's a change in your home environment. You're thinking about moving, and certainly to have an eclipse in your 4th says that there may be a change of residence. Not always, but for some, a change of residence over the next 6 months. Virgo, so this lunar eclipse is happening in what's called your 3rd. So this is a time that's really focusing on education, thinking, writing, listening, learning ideas, gathering ideas. And Scorpio being a bit of a sharp sign, it's a very analytical time for you. I think there's a sense with Scorpio, information is powerful, and to have information versus not having information kind of makes your life a little bit stronger and secure. But I think this time, especially with the eclipses also in your 9th, you have to sort of really check what you believe in, what you stand for, what sort of, sometimes we accept things without even questioning them. And I think on some level, this full moon is telling you to do your research. And with that in mind, Mercury, your planet, will be retrograde in Gemini, although we'll go back in Taurus. Gemini is your 10th sign, so there's something about your professional life that's tied up to all of this, and maybe even the beliefs that you stand for, and how does that shape your reputation, your status in life, the direction that you're going in. But nevertheless, this is a time that's about information, and maybe even Scorpio style, the revelation of secret information. Jupiter is leaving your relationship sign. Over the past 5 months, it's been about other people, new beginnings in your relationships, new people coming into your life, but now Jupiter is going into your 8th. So where is growth happening? Well, it's happening in a place we don't always typically think about growth. It's the 8th. It's this time where we have to face ourselves. We have to do the inner work. We have to search ourselves. We have to focus on our emotional and maybe even our mental health during this time. But Jupiter typically, gives us the opportunity to make positive and lasting changes in this area. The 8th is also a money part of your chart. So that can mean, bringing in support, other resources, money from other people, benefits, inheritances, if I'm being really Scorpio about it. But it is a time that's both deeply psychological, but also a time that touches on these deeper themes around stability and security, trust, power, and control. Libra. So Libra, this lunar eclipse is going to light up your second sign. It's about money and income and material stability, pretty much in keeping with the solar eclipse we had in Taurus back on April 30th. Really looking at your finances. How do you create more stability? How do you make more money? How do you gather the resources? It's always not just about money. It's also resources. And it's sort of the things that sometimes we take for granted. A roof over our head, money in the bank, and certainly food in the kitchen. It's a time to get back to basics. That said, we also have Jupiter going into Aries, and Libra, Aries is your relationship sign. So this is where I'm not going to overpromise Jupiter, but wherever Jupiter is, typically it's about opportunity, doors open, things work out, and maybe over the next however many months until October 28th, relationships are an area where there's a lot of growth and expansion. People are coming into your life. Your existing relationships sort of have a sense of getting more attention or more of what they need. Sometimes Jupiter makes an existing issue bigger, so that's my only fair warning. But typically, that's an area where something new beginnings, a renewal wants to come in. Sometimes when we're in a really difficult situation with somebody, not just romantic, but all relationship, we really need Jupiter to help us get us unstuck. So this is a time when we might have the courage, confidence, and bravery to actually leave something that's no longer supporting our life. Scorpio. Hold on to your hat, Scorpio. You're going to have a lunar eclipse in your sign. This is the first eclipse in your sign since 2013 and 2014. So that's quite a while ago. The eclipses return to your sign every 9 years. Just a little fun fact. So you are in the spotlight. Your life is sort of taking a turn. It's about big, important events. It's about relationships, other people, but also about you. Like, what's your part in the equation? New people are coming into your life. It's a time to deepen existing relationships. For example, we also have Jupiter going into Aries, and Aries is what's called your sixth sign. Wherever Jupiter is, typically things work out. That's, I'm not going to make a hard promise about that, but I've just noticed when Jupiter goes through the 6th, it's like we feel inspired, we feel the confidence to make positive changes in our day-to-day life. This includes health and wellness. So maybe that you're thinking about making some positive changes in how you treat your body, your relationship with your body, the foods you eat, getting exercise, going to the gym, getting your checkups, eating your vegetables, brushing your teeth, all of that, really that minutia of being a human being. But these things, of course, are important. Now, Scorpio has a reputation for being a workaholic, and that's partly because Aries is the 6th sign. So I say this as a little word of caution. Maybe you're going to be busy over the next however many months with Jupiter in Aries. You've had Jupiter in your 5th sign since the end of last year. The 5th sign is typically about having fun, relaxing, not pushing too hard. Maybe Scorpio, you needed it, but the idea is that you're going to be a little bit more busy, especially when Mars gets into Aries at the end of May. So really, just rest up, because it might be a very busy second half of 2022. We will see. But that said, Sun squares Saturn later this week. Certainly Sun conjunct North Node. You've got some serious decisions to make. Saturn tries to make things crystal clear. It's a reality check. It's nevertheless a very big time for you, Scorpio. Sagittarius. So Jupiter is what's called your ruling planet. Whatever Jupiter is doing in the sky on some level threads back to you. You have to, we look at astrology so much about personality and like, am I compatible with this person? It's actually so much more. It's a clock. And one of the big hands on the clock is Jupiter, and that so happens to be the hand on the clock that tells me what's on some sort of macro level happening with your life. So since last year, Jupiter's been in Pisces. It's been about home, family, roots, foundation. I don't know if you can hear the sirens. Anyway, perks of urban living. But the Jupiter has been down in your home environment. So maybe you made a move. Maybe you've made a change in your household. Maybe your family has expanded. Maybe you had a pregnancy and a baby. But now Jupiter is going into your 5th. So the next months until October 28th, it's about expanding you. It's about personality, fun, play, creative endeavors. This does include children, and it includes pregnancy for those for whom that is actually relevant information. But it says, don't forget who you are, Sagittarius. Make time for the things that give you joy, give you passion, light you up. Certainly, we live in stressful times. It might seem like a luxury to play and to have fun, but astrology actually teaches us that's an essential to life. So yeah, get back to the spark of you. Get back to the things that make you feel joy, feel pleasure, and feel fun. Jupiter, it will go back into Pisces. You have sort of this 2-month time when Jupiter goes back into Pisces on October 28th, and by the end of December of 2022, it's back in Aries. So it's so much of a time for Sagittarius right now about settling down. And at the same time, the lunar eclipse that's on the 16th of May, it's also about letting go. And I realize that's not always the thing you want to hear, but I think with all these things trying to come into your life, you have to make space. And maybe it means cleaning things out, letting go of physical possessions. Maybe it's cleaning out your soul. I mean, I think the 12th is a place where we have to get in touch with our higher self and let go of things, attachments, feelings, emotions, toxicities that are really not supporting our life. Oh, I will add that Mercury is a big planet in your astrology. It's a career planet. It's a relationship planet. So these are the two areas where you have to sort of go back and reflect instead of take action while Mercury is in retrograde. Capricorn. So Capricorn, as I've said before, your planet Saturn is in this dance with Uranus all year long. Yes, even though 2021 was the exact 3 squares, in 2022 Uranus and Saturn are still making squares. Just you're going to see this more next year. So you're in a time where you have to reinvent yourself, Capricorn. And you are a sign that typically wants to play by the rules, play by the script, do the things you're supposed to do. Of course, not every Capricorn's the same, but it's hard to change, especially when you're Saturn ruled, because Saturn says like this is concrete. How can we change this? Well, we have to tear it down. We have to make it different. So this might be a little bit of an uncomfortable time, Capricorn, but it's helping you to reveal something that's really truly you, as opposed to maybe all the responsibilities and duties that you carry that are actually not you. That said, this lunar eclipse is in your 11th. It's so much about your social circle, your friendships, your community, the groups you're connected to, but also helping you to get a vision of the future. And maybe that future needs to shift. It needs to change. You need to make way for something very different. But that said, Jupiter is going into your 4th sign, and between now and October 28th, where's the growth happening? It's happening in your home environment. So typically it's a new season in home. There's a move, there's a change in the household, there's an expansion of family, there's a settling down. Of course, every Capricorn's going to live this differently, but this is a time when it's so much about getting back to the things that are really supporting your life and really nourishing you at your deepest core. Aquarius. Aquarius, my final fixed sign. You know, you're in this rodeo with Taurus and Leo and Scorpio. But this lunar eclipse is putting the spotlight on your professional life. And professional life is different for everybody. There's a time when you need to make a decision about the direction you're headed. And maybe the direction you thought you were going in 2020 or 2021 is not the direction that life seems to be sending you right now. That said, a lunar eclipse in your career sign can talk about a change in position, a change in job, a change in duties and responsibilities. You have to see how this works out for you, but on some level, you are in the spotlight. And that's what a lunar eclipse is, a full moon. And so you're essentially having a full moon in your sign of career. So you are in the spotlight. It's a time to really reach for your ambitions. But on the other end of things, Taurus season reminds you that it's all about home, it's all about family, and making sure that that part of your life is secure, even if it's in a very different place than it was even a couple of years ago. Jupiter goes into Aries, and Aries is what's called your third sign. The third sign is about voice, and it's about communication, ideas, and information, and maybe you have a lot to say over the next few months, going into October 28th. Maybe education really takes a priority, and maybe you're taking classes, maybe you are going back to school, maybe it's workshops, maybe you're a writer, maybe you are writing, maybe you are doing more speaking and even public speaking. But there's so much about information and ideas and really nourishing your life with new ideas and perspectives. But, with, let's say, Sun square Saturn later this week, it is a pivotal time for you, Aquarius, and it's a time where a lot's trying to shift. And if you're wondering what's trying to shift, well, this has been in play for the last few years. So it's not, in theory, it's not so out of left field. Pisces. So my final sign, Pisces. Jupiter is leaving your sign. This is why I like to explain to people that just because you had Jupiter in your sign doesn't mean it's all kittens and rainbows. So on some level, this has been the start of a new cycle, a time of new adventures, new growth, new potentials, but nevertheless a new time where you have to kind of set off in a new direction. Jupiter going into your second, and Jupiter is what's called your ruling planet, says that over the next however many months until October 28th, you really need to focus on your material life. Now, new beginnings are great, but how do you anchor them in? How do you make them lived, and how do you make them real? So you may be sort of getting, really focusing on your security, your stability, your income, your spending over the next, until October 28th. But sometimes Jupiter brings windfalls. This is where I don't want to overpromise, but that area is easier wherever Jupiter is, typically, not always, but typically. In addition, you have the eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio. So this lunar eclipse that we are coming up to on May 16th is putting your fifth sign into, wait, is that true? Pisces, Scorpio, no, your ninth sign. It's putting your ninth sign in the spotlight. So it's really about what you believe in, your truths, your philosophies. The ninth is what really opens our eyes to the world beyond. And you are a Pisces, so in a way, this sort of picks up on something that you already know really well. It's like that search for truth and meaning. I mean, you are a sign that by your nature is trying to make sense out of things. So, this is the next however many months until October 28th, maybe you're focusing on your education. Maybe you're going back to school. Or maybe you're going out into the world, because the world is where you need to get those answers. You're traveling, you're traveling physically, you're traveling internally, you're traveling through books and ideas and information. But the idea is that you're getting clearer about what is your truth, what do you believe in, and what is your faith. That said, Mercury is one of your big planets. It is turning retrograde, so you're sort of pulling back over the next 4 weeks, re-evaluating, getting new perspectives and new ideas. So we had a lot to cover. We're kind of coming up to the hour. Thank you all for watching. This has been your look at the astrology of May 9th through 15th, 2022, right on the eve of Mercury retrograde. Sorry, my brain is in retrograde. I didn't realize it until I turned the camera on. I was like, uh-oh, Mercury's turning retrograde. I actually forgot about it because somehow it wasn't in my calendar, even though it's in my like big post-it note of the astrology. But anyway, here we are. And also you can get the webinar that I did. I did a 2-hour webinar on what these eclipses mean and what they mean for you. It's more of a deep dive. And you can get that. The link is in the show notes. It's also on my website, empoweringastrology.com. Of course, you can book a consultation with me. Many of you that show up week in, week out are my clients, or you tell me you watch when we sit down to have our consultation. I'm really deeply appreciative of all of you and your support. It's amazing that I get to do what I love on a daily basis, even when my brain is retrograde. But that said, thank you all for joining me. Follow me online on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Empowering Astrology, and I will see you all next week. Bye.